You're listening to the Piano Parent Podcast with Shelley Davis, episode 347. Hey there, and welcome to the Piano Parent Podcast. I'm Shelley Davis, a longtime piano teacher and parent with my husband of 4 mostly musical kids. As parents, we spend so much time trying to encourage and motivate our kids. We wonder if we're doing the best things for them. We second guess our decisions, and we worry if we're going to scar them for life. While you focus on encouraging your kids, I'm here to reassure and inspire you. I'll be here every week with practice tips, inspirational teacher interviews, and musical topics to help you impress your kids with your musical knowledge. Parenting is not for the faint of heart, but it's much easier with support, and you have come to the right place. Good morning, piano parents. Thank you for tuning in to this week's installment of the Piano Parent Podcast. Try to say that 10 times fast without popping into your microphone. How's your school year shaping up so far? Here in my part of Texas, we started school officially last week. Students just went 3 days, which was a nice kind of get used to the idea. This week is our first full week of school, and this is the first week of piano lessons. I tend to start my piano schedule just a little bit of a delay after school starts. My personal preference is to kind of layer things in one at a time instead of just jumping in cold turkey with everything. So we're starting back to piano lessons this week, and I hope you've been able to catch the last couple of episodes just kind of talking about cleaning off your piano. There was one back at the end of last semester talking about cleaning out your music bag. That was a reminder that I sent to my piano families this week to get ready for the new year. Let's get rid of anything that's weighing our music bags down, declutter, and get ready for a fresh new start. Part of that fresh new start has to do with today's guest. I met Brock Chart over the summer at our Texas Music Teachers Conference, and I had heard of him and followed him on Instagram and Facebook and seen his music, but it was so nice to actually get to visit with him and attend one of his sessions at our conference. And then I brought home several pieces of his music, and I'm looking forward to sharing his music with my students this school year. So if you are looking for new music for your piano kid, if you happen to be a teacher and you're looking for some new titles and just a different way of approaching music, then I think you'll be interested in hearing from Brock today. By way of introduction, let me read to you a little bit of his bio. Brock Chart, first of all, that's a great name for a pop, jazz, and rock composer. Brock Chart is a composer and studio owner in Kansas. Brock composes in many genres and mediums, including jazz, pop, educational piano, and film music. He's a proud alumni of the University of Kansas, KU, and was 2022 Composer of the Year by Kansas Federation of Music Clubs. Brock was awarded twice in Downbeat magazine for composition in large jazz ensemble writing and small group writing. He was an honorable mention in the 2017 New York Youth Symphony Commissions for his piece Down to the Wire. Brock also composed music for the MoMA's short film series How to See, which was in BFI's Best Video Essays of 2019. Since 2020, Brock composed and published 6 books through his company, My-Melodies Publishing: 5-Finger Jazz 1 and 2, 5-Finger Pop 1 and 2, 5-Finger Rock 1 and 2. These books received great reviews from pedagogues in publications like American Music Teacher Magazine and Piano Magazine. And that is what Brock is going to be talking about today, is sort of, we're going to dig into a couple of pieces from those different books. My favorite part of talking to teachers and composers is also hearing their backstory and the beginnings when they were a student, like the piano kid in your life. So enough from me. Let's jump into this wonderful conversation with Brock Chart. Brock, it is so nice to see you again. I got to meet you a couple of months ago at our Texas Music Teachers Conference, and I appreciate you so much taking some time to visit with us today. Welcome to the Piano Parent Podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shelley, for having me on. I appreciate it.
Very cool. And I had actually seen you, I've seen you around because it seems like our world has gotten so much smaller. When I met you officially, I felt like we were already old friends because I have followed you on Instagram and probably Facebook. And you have a wonderful collection of books, music books for early, intermediate type students that we're going to be talking about in just a little bit. But I wanted to just have you on the show so we can get to know you a little bit more. This podcast, is designed for piano parents as they're trying to encourage their kids when they're taking their lessons. We teachers have such a short amount of time with our students. It's really the parents that do all the heavy lifting. And so I wonder if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit of your backstory. Take us back into the early days when little Brock was learning to make music. Are you a piano player or do you have other instruments under your belt?
Yeah, and so I still remember it pretty well. I honestly hadn't even thought about music until I went to an auction with my grandfather when I was about 6, and they wheeled out some really rickety old beat up piano that nobody wanted, a couple cracks in the keys,
right,
and out of tune, and it was an upright. And he leaned over to me and asked, hey Brock, would you ever want to learn piano? And it doesn't really matter what you ask a 6-year-old. If you ask them anything, do you want to blank, they are going to be all on board and just, oh my God, absolutely. So yeah, we got that beat up old piano, and we got enrolled in lessons. And so that's kind of how I got started.
Do you think your grandfather planned that, or do you think it was spontaneous?
I think it was pretty spontaneous, which is, it's funny just to think about like how much of my life has been affected by just such a small, a
flip of the coin. It could go this way or that way.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think so. I had no musical interest or anything, before then.
Cool.
But it's pretty cool. So I thank goodness that rickety old piano was there on that day.
I'm just trying to imagine the scene. First of all, I love that you were just on an outing with your grandfather. Grandparents are so important in our lives and so influential. So I love that, first of all. Did you guys pal around and do other things together?
Oh, absolutely. He was really my hero. And just extremely supportive. And, no matter what I did, I was, pretty terrible at basketball, but, they would come to absolutely every game and, cheer on just like I was, LeBron James or something.
Yes. Yes.
So,
That's what grandparents are good at.
That's right.
So I'm trying to imagine the scene when he comes rolling up back home with this rickety old upright piano. Did your grandmother throw much of a fit, or was she like, okay, here we go?
No, I think everybody was, really on board and just, like we hadn't thought about it before, but okay, we'll make space, in the living room, we'll move some stuff around. And my first teacher was actually my elementary school music teacher. Perfect. Happened to play piano, and so we got set up with lessons and kind of went from there. And I honestly, the first couple of years I was, really into it and very excited about it. Kind of had dreams. Oh my gosh, I could be a rock star and I could do this and, play all these cool stuff for my friends and family, but a little bit, older, then, my tastes became, a little bit different, and I became a little bit pickier, all kids do. And so, I ended up kind of moving away from the piano a little bit, actually, just because the things that I was interested in, like jazz and, learning how to write and, do stuff by ear. And, my dad always showed me like, the cool, like classic rock songs, some Led Zeppelin and stuff like that. But, there's just not a lot of teachers that, can feel comfortable playing that, and even fewer feel comfortable teaching it. And so I kind of moved away from the piano a little bit and went over to the saxophone, actually.
Cool. So I'm guessing you did saxophone in band and
yes.
Kind of went through that
I honestly, saxophone was my main thing for quite a while. I would say, from like middle school for a few years. And because I could be in the jazz band. I could improvise. I was in the pep band, in the marching band, and like those are all tunes that I've heard before. They're on the radio. I'm with my friends, and like we doing cool band trips and stuff like that. So it was kind of checking all of the things that I had wanted to do on piano, but just wasn't given the chance.
Yes, and that's kind of the what. I don't want to say negative. What's a word? Downside, I guess, is the best word of solo piano lessons is that sometimes you're learning dead guy music. Yes. And you're working all by yourself and you're practicing by yourself, and it just doesn't have as much, it tends to not have as much of the social aspect. I think teachers today are wise to that, and they're doing a lot of things to add more of the social interaction for their students, but not back in the day.
No, I know. Yeah, I see so many teachers now that, emphasize group lessons and, I've seen like buddy lessons or, things like that. And I think that that's so cool, just like what you were saying, piano by nature is a pretty solitary instrument, and you really have to go out of your way to be involved in ensembles or bands or whatever, but it's such a fun part of music, and one of the things that I really fell in love with.
So tell me, did you quit piano when you started band, or did you kind of keep piano going, or how did that work out?
I definitely was not a great piano student during that time. It was very like, put it on the back burner, and, I still enjoyed music, but just like, oh my gosh, me and my teacher would butt heads every lesson. And so, I still enjoyed music, but did not look forward to lessons. And then it's funny, just of course, that coin flip, how much, your life can change from just a chance. Our jazz band pianist had, I don't know, graduated or moved or something like that. And so that spot was open as I was going into freshman year. Oh. And my jazz band director forced me into the jazz piano role because he knew that I could read at least a little bit. And I was so mad, Shelley. I was so mad at him. Oh, my God.
No more saxophone for you.
Oh, that's right. I just thought, and at that age, I mean, that's, life is over. It can't, that's the only thing that matters. Oh, I was so mad that summer. But then, oh, man, I found out that like, I could improvise. I could do, all the things that I enjoyed about the saxophone, I could do here. And I just really fell in love with the piano again and fell hard.
Oh, good. Very good. That makes me think of, I know you met Steve Hughes at our Texas Music Teachers Conference.
Yeah,
and
Steven's
I think
great.
He's wonderful. I think I saw pictures of the two of you when you went to Chicago to the National Conference on Keyboard Pedagogy.
Yeah.
Steve's been on the podcast before. He actually did a 2-part series talking about your exact scenario when your band director finds out you can play the piano and all of a sudden you're thrown into the jazz world. And anyway, I'll have to link up his 2 episodes in the show notes where he kind of talked step by step about how to interpret all these crazy hieroglyphics and make actual music out of them. So you're living proof.
But but yeah, I had a blast in, getting to know like jazz piano and, started going to camps and, stuff like that. And, found a group of friends in the jazz band that, we played with each other and, made each other better and, kind of challenged ourselves. And then, that led to rock bands. And, I really, fell in love all over again and just, fell hard, really.
Very, very cool. So let me back up a second. I'm eager to get to the good stuff. Not that this isn't the good stuff. This is the really great foundational, just to kind of see where you came from and what influenced your trajectory moving forward, and to see where you've landed at this moment. But let's back up just a little bit and talk about your parents. How did they influence you as far as when you and your teacher were butting heads? Did your parents get involved? Did they say stick with it, or how did they help you keep moving forward, whether it was with band or with piano or both?
Yeah, it was, kind of a stick with it sort of thing. And, my parents always reminded me that, even though my teacher, and myself were butting heads during lessons, I still played the piano. I would still, after school, just kind of do my own thing. It was just everything I wasn't supposed to do, everything besides what was written in my lesson notes. Yes. But, so they knew that I still enjoyed music and still loved it. And so, they encouraged me to, listen to, this, or, my dad had, this great vinyl collection of classic rock stuff and, got really into that and, would encourage me to, do other instruments like the saxophone and kind of in anything like that, and would encourage me to go to my friend Tanner's going to this camp. Brock, why don't you guys be roommates at this camp or whatever, cool. And so they were always very supportive, and they knew that even though I butted heads, like I still enjoyed playing.
Oh, that's cool. That's the good thing about parents. They have that maturity over their children that when we as kids, we can just see past the end of our nose. Yes. Our parents can see the long game. Yes. And it's so wise for parents to just help your kids kind of get over that hump. It's a little turbulent right now, but stick with it, because just around the corner, you don't know what kind of wonderful things await you, but don't give up too soon.
Absolutely. And just, my parents were very flexible, like I was butting heads with the piano teacher, but like, I was really into, saxophone. Okay, let's find a saxophone person. Let's, like whatever my interests are, they're like flexible and, and absolutely, they could see further down the road than I could, that, I do enjoy it. And, if I could just get past this hump.
Were your parents musical themselves? Did they play instruments or just enjoy listening to it?
My mom did play piano when she was a kid. And my dad is just, a huge music lover, but never played an instrument himself.
Okay. See, I think that's so cool. My dad dabbles kind of, he'll pick things out by ear. He's got a good ear for music. I think my mom would have liked to have taken lessons, but being the only girl in a family of 5, there were 4 boys, and then she was the only girl. They were all about sports. So she played basketball and volleyball, but she never got the chance to learn music. And so I love it when parents give their children the opportunity to do things that maybe they didn't get to do, or maybe just kind of keep it going when the parents often say, I took lessons as a kid. I wish I hadn't quit. And so I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
So tell me, we're going to be talking about some books that you have available, and I'm excited to get to that. I wonder, you said that you were interested in writing and kind of improvising and doing music your way. Tell me a little bit more about that and your beginning days of composing.
Yeah. I think with most people, it starts with improvisation. And, I always was more of an ear player, which is one of the reasons why I, butted heads, and now that I'm a teacher, like I can absolutely see myself and some of my own students, and, they have different strengths, and,
Yes.
and so that's fun to see. But yes, absolutely. It started with just, my dad would show me these tunes or whatever, and I'd try to play him on piano, and it took a while, but I was very into Led Zeppelin and AC/DC and Styx and like Santana and a lot of like that classic rock stuff, and that doesn't have a lot of piano, surprisingly, but like
Right.
I would just kind of like had some loudspeakers or put on my headphones, and like I had a keyboard in my room and would just like mess around with that and just kind of try to figure it out and try to just mess around and solo with it. And then that led to learning more about improvisation with saxophone, and kind of understanding that there's a name for that, and that there's a style of music that is all about that, jazz music.
Yes.
And so became really into jazz. And then I started to write some pop and rock stuff a little bit, and my jazz teacher, my saxophone teacher, encouraged me like, hey, you should write something for our combo. And, I hadn't thought of that before, but, I thought that like, oh man, I could write something for like other people. And so just thought that was the coolest thing. And I wrote like a tune called Pocket Change. I remember thinking that was a cool name. And it was like a funk tune. And really loved that, and thought that was super cool to, kind of get my friends involved with it, and to, just kind of be a part of something bigger. And but most of the stuff that I had written was, like jazz tunes for like the combo, or I don't know, just like little lame pop ballads as like a moody teen in high school. So... But and then I ended up going to school for composition, and just really loved it.
Very cool. Now, I've spoken to some teachers, and we hear stories of composers, back in the day that if they wanted to pursue music as a career, as a livelihood, parents were a little bit nervous about that. And you hear of, I'm trying to think, was it Tchaikovsky or one of those guys that their dad wanted him to be a lawyer, and maybe it was Handel. And how did your parents feel about that idea of making music as your livelihood?
Well, I don't think that there was a lot of pushback, which, looking back, like maybe there should have been. I think, like everything's great, when you're like in school, and then you get out and like, oh man, what do I do now? And so, and that's stuff that you don't really think about until like that senior year, and I had kind of thought about like, oh man, I can't just go down to the local music factory and, pick up a job there. It's really like a job as a musician and as a writer, or, any number of different things in our field. You really have to make a job.
Yes.
And, like at the time, I've always been a teacher, teaching at like other studios and things. And I did really, really love that. And a lot of times what I would do, my kids would request tunes from the radio or whatever, whether it's Beyonce or, I don't know, Adele or Taylor Swift or whatnot. And they would want to do that, but they're like 8. They can't do that. And, some of the arrangements are, pretty hit or miss, either very just wrong or easy, or, they look like a Rachmaninoff concerto.
Right.
And so, I would arrange little things because I enjoy doing stuff by ear, and like to do that with the kids during the lesson and make it kind of a learning exercise. And we could, kind of make this arrangement that they could actually play together. And that kind of led into, maybe I can write my own pieces for some of the kids.
Yes. And that's the perfect segue. Let's keep going down that path. I'll just go ahead and just say out loud, you currently have 6 books,
Yes.
basically 3 different genres. You
Yep.
have 5-finger rock, 5-finger pop, and 5-finger jazz. And each of those, you have book 1 and book 2. Do you want to talk about how those came about, which came first, or let's go.
Absolutely. So yeah, in 2020 we came out with the jazz books. Those were first, book 1 and book 2. The book 1s are always like a little bit easier, like late elementary to like early intermediate students.
Which, just for parents
yeah.
that are listening, that's maybe a student that's been diligently working for 2 or 3 years, you would say.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. And then, book 2 is going to be like a little bit more difficult, maybe like early intermediate to intermediate.
Yes.
And then, the year after we did pop 1 and 2, that'd be 2021. And then, let's see, last October, we did the rock books 1 and 2. So those are our most recent ones.
Cool. Now, for someone listening, an unsuspecting listener
Sure.
who is just meeting you for the first time, they may have in their mind, okay, cool, another rock book, okay, or another jazz book, whatever. But your books are different, and that's why part of why I wanted you to come on the show is to help us understand how your books are different and how your music is unique, and tell us a little bit more about the graphics and the way you have built the songs as far as technical difficulty.
Sure.
And then also I want to talk about the backing tracks too.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, it's funny. I sent a couple of drafts of early drafts of the jazz books to like Hal Leonard and like Alfred, and didn't hear anything back from Hal Leonard, and got the kindest rejection letter from Tom Giroux at
Yes.
Alfred. He was a very nice, gave us some good advice.
Oh, good.
And then I figure, well, I put a lot of time into this. It's something I want to do. I'm going to try it. So I decided to self-publish, and
Yes.
that ended up being, a whole can of worms. And if I had known like what was all involved, I probably wouldn't have done it.
You would have scared yourself, but I'm glad you didn't know.
Right. But, I'm glad that I didn't know. But yes, right from the get-go, I wanted to make songs that were actually playable by younger kids, and that sounded like the real thing. That sounded
Yes.
like, upbeat and very modern and contemporary, and the stuff that my kids in the studio were asking for. And, I remember from my lessons, I didn't have any of that. The covers were boring. They've been around for 100 years, and all that stuff. And so anything that I can do as a teacher, as a writer, to get kids excited about lessons, excited about the music that they can play, and just, excited to be on that piano bench because they want to be there.
Yes.
And so I designed, I can't draw anything, but I wanted them to look like comic books. And so to get that kind of deer in headlights, when you showed a student like, the covers, like, oh my God, I can't, I've never seen that before, and they can't wait to open the first piece. And so I hired a comic book artist. It's, funny how the internet works. I've never actually met the guy.
Yes.
But his name's Francois Vignal out of Montreal. And he is just absolutely incredible and has done all of our artwork since.
Wonderful.
And then, as for the tunes inside, again, I wanted them to be very modern, very upbeat, and most of all, fun.
Yes.
In kind of 5-finger-ish positions. That's the name of the books. But, it is pretty broad. A lot of times what I like to do is, have maybe the left hand be in D while the right hand be in A.
Yes.
And the Faber books do this pretty early on where, they'll have, one hand be in this and the other one be in that. And compositionally, you get so many more different colors. And I feel like it makes for better readers because they're not just memorizing fingerings in one position,
Yes.
And so that was kind of my approach here. And it ended up being kind of a challenge to myself during a class that I took in school. That was just like, I challenged myself to, write a piece that I enjoyed that the hands did not move at all. And it was only, quarter notes and half notes. And, that's stuff that kids can play.
Yes.
If you write it in the right way. And I ended up just absolutely loving that process. And it seems weird that that amount of rules and red tape to compose, it, sounds like it would hinder you. But actually, I feel like I write my best stuff, the more restrictions that I have.
Yes.
Because it kind of makes me think, how can I bend these rules? How can I think outside of the box? So it's honestly probably my preferred thing to write nowadays is to kind of be in those, self-restricting sort of stuff. And yeah, I just have a blast writing them.
I love that. I was just looking up when you said that the more restraints or the more boundaries you put, you actually have more freedom to create. There's some beautiful quote along those lines, and I can't find it. But
yeah. But I can't draw to save my life, but it could be really intimidating to just look at a blank canvas and be given, a 64 box of crayons and just say, go.
Yes.
Who knows? But if you give yourself kind of a prompt or, I'm going to draw this, but in this way, then, then the ideas really start moving, at least for me.
Yes.
And I'm always the type of student, probably a bad quality, but if I'm given a set of rules, I'll think of every way that I can, kind of stretch them a little bit, into my favor, but still, tiptoeing that line.
Yes.
But I really enjoy that type of thing when I compose, and yeah, that's what I try to do in my pieces. I
think that's really cool. And I was playing some of your pieces earlier, and I liked it. It for the most part. I'm chasing my own tail. I like that it is. You could say that it's in a 5-finger pattern broadly, because
Sure.
you also kind of move just, maybe stepwise a little bit up, or there's a few finger crossings and all of that. And I tell my students, when you're playing, you try to imagine an umbrella and all of the notes that you can get under the umbrella of this one hand position. And then when you need to move, you can lift your hand and move to a new spot. But rather than trying to do those crazy fourth finger crossing over your pinky or crazy stuff like that.
Yep.
So I like that you've got some broad umbrellas that students can feel confident to play. They're not having to stop and think about a giant leap necessarily.
Right.
They're able to kind of meander and confidently read the notes. And I think that's brilliant.
I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, that was the whole, everybody, myself included, when I was a kid, wants to play the stuff that's on the radio.
Yes.
You want to be able to play those big boy, big girl sounds right from even a week of lessons,
Yes.
But I mean, there's a lot that needs to happen before then. But, that's the whole reason why I made these books, is to, get those modern, those big boy, big girl sounds that people are used to, but in a way that they can practically do and feel confident about it, and not spend 6 months learning one piece.
Yes. Yes.
I have a short attention span. All of these songs are 2 pages. So they're perfect for kids. I am a kid. Really?
And you were talking too, just kind of about the rhythmic restrictions.
Yes.
I like how you have you've been kind of sneaky about writing in, what is this? This is the pop book. And I kind of landed on Nothing But Sunshine.
Yeah, I
And
love that
you
piece.
snuck in some interesting syncopations and kind of, accenting the offbeat and all of that. But the way you've written it is very reader friendly to
Yes.
a new student or a newish student.
Absolutely. That's a big thing as well. Anything I can do to just make kids, feel really confident about what they can read. I was not a strong reader. I was always an ear person, still am. And, I seen some spooky rhythms or 16th notes or whatever scare me to death,
Yes.
but if I had something that was like quarter notes and half notes, like, my confidence just goes through the roof, even if the piece is difficult or has jumps or whatever. Just visually, there's something about that makes a difference in somebody's mind, especially a kid's mind.
Yes.
And so, absolutely, Nothing But Sunshine is a great example. A lot of pop music is very complex rhythmically. Everybody's like, oh, pop music is just, four chords. But especially rhythmically, it's incredibly complex, especially a lot of today's like more modern, like rap songs and hip hop music. There is crazy syncopations. There's, 16th notes, 32nd notes. And there's like, some of the stuff today just has like, I don't know, like 50 different layers of like, whether it's drums or electronic instruments or synths or samples happening at the same time. And so it's difficult to get those sounds arranged for solo piano, first of all, and then something that like an 8 or 9-year-old can do.
Yes.
And so with these, I really tried hard to, analyze what makes this genre pop. And how can I write that in a way that a younger pianist can do? And so with that tune, it is a hip hop song, which has a lot of syncopation. Otherwise, sometimes it's lame if it's not, right?
Right.
That's the stuff that kids are hearing. How can I write that rhythm, that syncopated rhythm that makes kids feel confident about it? And I tried to, I found out that if you kind of double up the time, like what we might hear is syncopated eighth notes, but if you write them in quarter and half notes, it's the same sound, but
Yes.
Oh my gosh, it makes a world of difference for kids.
Yes. Yes. Oh man. That I think it is extremely interesting, bordering on ironic, that a self-proclaimed ear guy is so conscientious about visuals. And I love that about you. And not only just visualizing and looking at the rhythm and how am I, as a student, how am I going to be able to play this? But then even going back to your graphics and we're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but we know that we all do.
Oh, absolutely. Especially for kids,
Yes.
that makes a huge difference.
And not only the covers are very inviting. I'm going to show this in case I get to put this up on YouTube. It's just extremely colorful, very much has that comic book feel. But then you showed me this at the conference when you open up to the table of contents. Oh my goodness. Would I have your permission to post a picture of the table of contents in the
please.
show notes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my goodness. It just looks so appealing. And when I see a title like Bad Apple, I didn't play that one when I was playing earlier.
Sure.
But seeing the graphic on the thing, I'm showing it to you like you don't know what it looks like. But seeing the graphic makes me think, oh, that looks interesting. And more than just trying to look at the music and figure out if that looks interesting or not.
Yep. And the titles have to be cool. That makes a difference. My kids are so picky. They're like, Mr. Brock, I want a piece that's fast, but not too fast, and then minor, but it's not too minor. And then it has to, they have so many rules. It is crazy. There's no way that it can, any piece can fit the bill. But, one of those things is it's got to have a cool name. Even if it's just the perfect piece for them, they like the sound of it. It's right their level. If it, has a lame name, they're not going to play it. They're so picky. And so that was, kind of fun to come up with the names as well.
So is there a backstory or anything that you can share about Nothing But Sunshine, the title of that one?
Ooh, Honestly, I'm pretty bad with titles most of the time. I am really bad with words most of the time and a terrible lyricist, but every once in a while, like when I like play a song or when I'm writing or whatever, I'll kind of like what do I call it? It's like a flow state. Like I don't even think about it, and I just like say words that like kind of fits the rhythm and probably has no meaning at all. And you know, it doesn't have a story at all, but that's just, I don't know, just like let my mind kind of wander. And a lot of times that ends up being the name. Yes. And I think that Nothing But Sunshine was one of them.
I think that's cool. I do something similar when I'm working on a piece of music, especially more of a classical piece, not something that's already got lyrics or a specific direction. And one part might make me think of knocking on a door, and another part sounds like a scarf falling through the wind. And they don't have to be coherent as far as a specific storyline, but they help me get the different scenes that I want to convey in the music.
I think that's cool. You know, it's taking, you know, something that's on paper and just ink on a page and making it a story in your mind. It makes you feel it better. And, you know, and I think your audience can hear that too when they hear it.
Yes. Another one that I was playing around with, I'm so glad I bought your books whenever I met you at the conference, but I pulled out the rock book and I was playing Highway to Nowhere.
Oh, I really love that one too. Yeah.
That one was fun. This one has a repeated pattern in the right hand, but then the left hand is moving by fifths, kind of going lower. It just made me think of a bass guitar going lower or stepwise.
Absolutely. So, you know, in the books, like, you know, we've been talking about how picky my kids are, and I know that. And so every tune I really tried to have as wide of a range of style or genre or tempo or whatever that I possibly could. And, you know, that particular piece, Highway to Nowhere, I had just watched like the most recent Top Gun movie and loved it. It's just a bunch of fun. And it made me rewatch the first one, the original. And that soundtrack to the original is so much fun. It's just aggressively 80s is the best way that I can, you know, Highway to the Danger Zone and like all of those. And like that Berlin track is great. And so that's really the idea for Highway to Nowhere. I wanted to make something just like that would fit in an original like 80s, you know, Top Gun thing. And let's see. Ooh. I might be able to, can I play you something?
Please, yes.
Ooh, can I do screen sharing? I have like a piano camera.
Oh, look at you go. Okay, let me say there. I think I turned it on so you can.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Ooh, yeah, and I can, let's see, I think I can flip that around. Okay.
Oh, good. Now I'm not upside down anymore.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. So let's see. I got to remember how to do this.
See, I'm looking at your keyboard for podcast listeners. It looks like it may as well be the control panel of a 747. All the buttons are so intimidating.
Yeah, this thing is, I just got it like last year and I barely know what to do on it, but it's just fun just to get lost, you know, on this. But I found this synthesizer on here. Yeah, that's just like the coolest. Let me know, Shelly, if this is like too loud at all or anything.
No, I think it's okay. Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I was thinking like, you know, with that 80s, you know, thing, it's all about like the synths. And so I found this super cool like sound. So, but a lot of times like just like little different synthesizers, like using different instruments or whatever will kind of spark something. But yeah, I had to kind of show you the
I love it. So much fun. Thank you for playing that for us. I have to tell you, I was going to tell you this later, but just 2 days ago from when we're recording this, my summer piano students got to go play at a local restaurant, and we had 80s night. And I hired, my husband plays guitar, and I hired a bass player, and I hired a drummer to come and back them up. It was so much fun.
That is such a good idea, Shelley. I wish I had you as a teacher when I was a kid.
It was so awesome. So, and one kid asked to play Danger Zone. He was working on it. It didn't work out. He didn't get to come to the concert. But yeah, this has the same kind of feel, and I'm loving. I'm an '80s kid, so that you're speaking my language.
It's so much fun. It's so much fun.
So let's talk about backing tracks, because I did play both of these songs with the backing tracks that I got from you, and it was so awesome. I honestly was playing them too fast. So playing with the backing track helped me get calm down and play at the speed it should be. But it would have been so helpful, because those kids that played at this concert, next year I'll plan better so that we have a day to rehearse and help them communicate with the band better. But I'm also going to be having them play these songs with your tracks, just to help that sense of a steady pulse, and to practice and get used to listening to something outside of yourself. Let's talk about your backing tracks.
Absolutely. The backing tracks were something that was really important to me when I figured out I wanted to do this. And the first set of books was jazz, and I always was never impressed with MIDI jazz tracks. Our band director or whatever would be like, practice with these, and it's just the lamest ride pattern I've ever heard on on the drums, and it's just never inspiring, and nobody practiced with it because of that. And so it was really important to me to the first set was jazz, and so I wanted to have a real drummer and a real upright bass player on all of them where we made a jazz trio. And so it's funny, we ended up, because it came out in 2020, having to do remote recording because of the pandemic. But I actually ended up really loving that, and all the other guys in the band did too, because we could all just put on headphones and record in our PJs, and you also get a lot more control, out of the recording. And I just absolutely loved it. And on the pop and the rock stuff, we added a guitar player friend of mine. And gosh, he just brings such a cool factor to it. He's doing all the effects and different pedals. And, sometimes he'll layer in acoustic guitar and then, electric guitar over the top. And, again, the whole reason behind these books is just for kids to have fun, and anything I can do to just get them feeling like they're a rock star, when they're practicing or performing, that makes just a world of difference.
It absolutely does. And, we were talking earlier about getting over the hump. Everybody, no matter how interested they are in anything, but piano in particular, we just hit seasons where we're just kind of in a slump. And I think it's so good for parents to be aware of these supplemental pieces of music with the cool backing tracks that can help their kids kind of keep going and get over this little hump until they find their own, passion again.
Absolutely. And, there's so many, pedagogical things behind the backing tracks too, that, kids just listen to it and ooh, that's cool. But, pedagogically, like we had talked about, piano is such a solitary instrument. I had absolutely horrendous time for years, and like, would play some like, little solo piano gigs or whatever. And I just found out that I just absolutely horrendous time because I never played in a band before. Nobody had ever told me that. And I refused to practice with a metronome. I was not a very good student, but had I been with a band, I learned to have good time because I'm playing with people. I can hear the hi-hat. I can, and so it helps a lot with, it's basically, I always joke with teachers, you can get your kids to play with the metronome without using the M word.
Right.
They'll run for the hills.
Right. But, and they'll say, that thing is throwing me off.
Yep.
Well, that's a big red flag.
And, I have all sorts of different types of students and, different situations. And so every single backing track that we have, you also get 4 versions of everything. There's what we have an ensemble accompaniment, which is the full band, piano, bass, guitar, drums. That's the real reference recording at full tempo. Also get a spotlight recording, which is, piano, bass, guitar, it's the full band minus piano for performances, for recitals, for festivals, concerts, whatever. And then you also get 60% speed and 80% speed recordings. And so, you can send your kid those and they can literally have fun like with the tracks from the get-go, from when they first get the piece, doing the 60% speed, they get a little bit better, having fun at the 80%, and then they're feeling good, playing with the full speed ensemble thing, and then they're ready for the show and doing the spotlight thing. So they're literally having fun with the band all the way, from first day to performance.
Yes. And I would say, going back to your dad playing classic rock albums for you, listen to the whole ensemble thing just to get acquainted with what you're aiming for before you ever even play. Just get that in your ear.
That's huge. You know, like I'm always so surprised when like, I don't know, we're like learning a piece or whatever. And I like, ask a kid, like, did you listen to this on YouTube? Nope. Like that's our whole art. Like it's about our ears, and like I always joke, I only know how to say tortilla because I've heard somebody say tortilla. If I just looked at it, tortilla.
Exactly. That's true.
So a lot of like language, type of stuff with music, and listening is such an important part of our
my
craft.
go-to is, you've heard the expression, a picture is worth 1,000 words. I believe listening to a piece of music is worth 1,000 attempts at sight reading. You pick up all the nuance.
Absolutely.
So cool. Well, I'm loving your books. I'm pegging. I only got one of 3 of the different ones, but I'm already pegging students that are going to need to get them. So I'll be placing an order with you before too much longer.
Awesome.
And I saw in the back of one of your books that you've got a sample of something that's coming down the pike, 5-Finger Classics. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So, it's kind of out of the comic book thing. All of the old comics books always used to have, a couple pages or like a chapter out of, the next part of the next issue. And so I thought that would be kind of fun too. And yes, I might beat my head, but I would love to do a classics book where our backing tracks are with a string quartet. Would be super cool. But, of course I realized like, oh my God, what am I talking about? That is going to take so much time and work and planning and writing to do. But, so I'm not coming out with any books in 2023, but I'm hoping, fingers crossed, maybe like fall of next year for those.
Good.
But, they're kind of like original pieces still, but, very much in the styles of, the big composers, whether it's, Debussy or Beethoven or Mozart or, just like, again, accessibility is a big thing for me, getting those big, adult sounds, but at a way that they can play, and awesome. So maybe like looking at, sounding like Mozart without, reading 16th notes constantly, or, stuff like that.
Yet. I mean, it's a good stepping stone to build toward that.
Right.
Absolutely. So actually, I think that's probably pretty good timing, because my listeners, if they weren't familiar with you before, now they know about you, and we're going to share how they can get in touch with you and place their orders. And then that gives us a little over a year and a half to kind of consume what you already have. It gives you time to give us something new. So when we're ready, we can meet in the middle.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, and of course, Shelley, I would be more than happy to give you guys like a little like unique discount code for your podcast.
Oh, thank you.
Would you just like, I could make it anything you want, like a Piano Parent 10 or something like that for 10% off?
Thank you. So what would we do? Your website is my-melodies.com.
Yep.
And then we would, I guess when we make our purchase, we would put in a coupon code?
Yep, that's it. Yep, my-melodies.com is our website. And yeah, you'd be able to use that 10% off for any physical books, any digital books. I also have studio license as well that 10% off would apply to. So anything on the website. And yep, just at checkout, there'll be an option right before and it'll say, do you have a discount code or a promo code? And yeah, you could just type in Piano Parent 10 to get a 10% off.
The number 10, 10?
Yep, that's right.
Fantastic. That's very generous of you, Brock. Thank you.
Absolutely, Shelley.
Take advantage of that.
Oh, absolutely. I truly appreciate you having me on.
Definitely. And I'll put that in the show notes.
Okay.
And then, so we've got your website, and how you're on socials too. Is it also My-Melodies?
Yes. That's us on Facebook. And then on Instagram, I think it's My-Melodies Publishing. On Instagram. Yep.
Good. And I'll have that linked up in the show notes.
Okay.
So they'll be able to find you all kinds of ways.
Cool.
And I appreciate you so much for spending some time with us today. I'm glad I got to meet
Shelley.
you in person, and it's been fun catching up with you for the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much again. I appreciate you having me on.
And that's the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for hanging around all the way to the end. If you haven't done so already, this would be a great time for you to hit the subscribe button. If you're listening through Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever your favorite podcast player is, hit subscribe so you will be the first to receive next week's episode. I would love to connect with you. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Piano Parent Podcast, and you could just email me, Shelley at pianoparentpodcast.com.